Joining me now is Rick Hasen, director of the Safeguarding Democracy Project at UCLA Law. Rick, thank you for being here tonight. I first just want to talk to you about the scope of this lawsuit against the Des Moines Register. It is not a defamation suit, similar to the ABC lawsuit. It is been filed under Iowa's Consumer Fraud Act. How is that meaningful? How is that a meaningful difference? And what does that entail? What is the sort of difference between that and a classic defamation suit?
Well, so this law is primarily meant to protect consumers who are sold fraudulent goods, sold goods without warranties, bilked out of money. It's not typically used for political purposes. It's not typically used for polling. And so there are really, I think, three big hurdles that Trump would face in this lawsuit, assuming that it goes forward from this complaint. First is that he probably can't prove some of the elements of the complaint, like that the Des Moines Register made false statements. So long as they were accurately reporting the results of their poll, there's nothing false there. They also don't seem to have been providing any false information to deceive consumers. Trump goes out of his way to talk about how this is merchandise and services can count as merchandise. It's very convoluted. It doesn't really fit. So that's another problem. And then there's a bigger problem, which is the First Amendment. Defamation, like this Iowa suit, it's a kind of tort suit. The one is common law, one is statutory. But what the Supreme Court has said is that when it comes to political speech in the defamation context, we need to provide breathing room when people criticize public figures. And so you have to prove what's called actual malice, which means the statements are made either with knowing falsity or with reckless disregard as to whether it's true or false. And although I'm not aware of any cases where the Iowa consumer fraud statute has been subject to an actual malice standard, in this context, where you have a candidate trying to attack a poll he doesn't like just because he didn't like the result without any evidence that it was a falsified poll, it seems to me there's going to be a strong First Amendment defense here if we even got to whether or not the elements of the tort could be met.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having a bit of a hard time understanding the basic logic if we're looking at it from the consumer fraud piece. Like, Ann Seltzer and the Des Moines Register are to some degree discredited by the virtue of the fact that this poll was so off, right? Like, a company doesn't willfully make products that it knows are going to be defective and revealed in stunning fashion to be defective because that's bad for business, right? That's just a very kind of ill-advised sort of fraud, if in fact it is even fraud, right? Basic logic dictates that they would want to be accurate as opposed to being inaccurate from a consumer kind of business marketplace standpoint. Is that right?
Sure. And remember who the plaintiff is here is Donald Trump. He's lost money because of this. It's just the whole thing doesn't fit. And you might ask, well, why didn't he just sue for defamation? Well, because he wouldn't be able to meet the requirements to prove defamation. This is very different than the ABC suit, where there was a statement that was made by someone, and you could argue about whether that statement was false and whether it was made with actual malice. Here, this is kind of garden variety polling. And, I can't get into anyone's head, but it sure seems like this lawsuit is meant to deter negative information about Donald Trump, whether it's polling or something else. It's meant to be a deterrent. Because, right, when you buy a lawsuit, even if it's non-meritorious, it's very expensive to litigate these things. And of course, when you're litigating against one of the most powerful people in the world, that itself can be quite intimidating.
Rick, Trump said that he really wants his DOJ to be fighting these battles in the future on his behalf. This is what he said. Let's just take a listen to that really quickly.
And I feel I have to do this. I shouldn't really be the one to do it. It should have been Justice Department or somebody else, but I have to do it. It costs a lot of money to do it, but we have to straighten out the press. Our press is very corrupt.
Is that feasible? I mean, should we look forward to, as members of the press, the DOJ launching suits like this, or is that a sort of a dream that may have to be deferred, given the fact that the Justice Department, I don't know, sometimes is run according to the actual law?
Well, we don't know what the political appointees of the Justice Department have planned. I mean, there are lots of things that could be done to deal with the press. For example, going after journalists who refuse to reveal confidential sources. There are certain kinds of protections that are not necessarily constitutionally required for the press, but that the Biden Department of Justice has been willing to put in place in order to protect the press as an important part of our society and serving a function in investigating and in educating the public. Even if there are no lawsuits being filed against the press, there's plenty that can be done that could undermine the investigative functions of the press, and that could, especially when you're talking about smaller entities, could deter them if they don't have the resources, or if they're even larger entities, if the corporate sponsors of those entities don't want the fight. You might see them, like ABC News, just rolling over and saying, I'm not going to fight this battle this time.
Chilling on many levels. Rick Hasen, thank you so much for making the time. It's great to get your perspective on all of this.